For centuries, one technique fed entire frontier families from a single river. The total cost? About $1. $1 in line, $1 in hooks, and it outperformed every piece of fishing gear on the market by a factor of 5 to 15. Today, that technique has been regulated nearly out of existence. Meanwhile, the industry that replaced it pulls in $50 billion a year. $50 billion, selling you rods, reels, lures, electronics, and boats, all to catch one fish at a time. A basic rod and reel setup runs $50 to $500 or more. The method you're about to learn costs roughly $1 in materials, and it doesn't just match that expensive gear, it buries it. So why have you never heard of it? By the end of this video, you'll know how to build, deploy, and run a trotline from scratch. The same passive fishing system that military survival manuals still teach today. The same system your great-grandparents relied on to keep protein on the table year-round. And to understand why something this effective was pushed out of your life, you have to go back, way back. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, this is what we do. We find the knowledge they stopped teaching and we put it back in your hands. Practical survival skills, proven techniques, things your grandparents knew that somehow vanished from the public conversation right around the time someone figured out how to sell you the expensive alternative. If that mission matters to you, subscribe. Not for us, for the skills that are disappearing while the industries that replaced them keep cashing checks. So let's start where this technique started, on the rivers that built this country. Indigenous peoples across North America were using set lines long before European contact. Bone hooks, plant fiber cordage, lines stretched across river channels and left to fish on their own while the people who set them did other work. This wasn't sport, this was survival, and it worked. When European settlers pushed into the Mississippi River system in the 1700s and 1800s, they found these techniques already in practice, and they adopted them immediately. Along the rivers of the Ozarks, the American South, and the entire Mississippi drainage, trotlining became a standard household skill. Not a hobby, not recreation. A primary food procurement method. Families ran trot lines year-round, spring through fall for catfish, drum, and carp. Even in winter when ice allowed, a single line with 20 to 30 hooks could feed a family of 6, every single day, without anyone standing on a riverbank holding a pole. Then came the Great Depression in the 1930s, and trotlining surged. When money disappeared, people went back to what worked. Set lines went into every river, creek, and pond that held fish. Because when you can't buy food, you catch it. And when you need to catch it efficiently, you don't use one hook, you use 25. The United States military recognized this. Survival field manuals included trotline construction as a standard technique for personnel in evasion or survival scenarios. The reasoning was simple. A soldier behind enemy lines cannot stand beside a stream holding a fishing rod for hours. But a soldier can set a line with multiple hooks, leave it, and return later to collect protein. The military validated what frontier families had known for generations. Here's the mechanical principle that makes all of this work, and it's worth understanding because it's what separates trotlining from rod and reel fishing at a fundamental level. A trotline uses circle hooks. When a fish takes the bait and turns to swim away, the circle hook design causes the hook to rotate and set itself in the corner of the fish's mouth. No human has to be present. No one has to feel a bite, set the hook, or fight the fish. The system is fully passive. It fishes while you sleep. That single mechanical fact, self-setting hooks operating without human attention, is why trotlining is so efficient. And it's why the industry that sells you gear requiring your constant presence doesn't want you to know about it. So if this technique is this old, this proven, and this effective, what happened? Follow the money. Now, what you're watching right now is the surface. On this channel, we go deep. Our vault contains the full research behind every video we produce, documented techniques across food procurement, water purification, field medical skills, shelter construction, and security protocols. No filler, no fluff, just the knowledge that used to be common and isn't anymore. The link is in the description. Trotlining is just the beginning. Now, back to the question. If trotlining works this well, why don't you know about it? Here's where it gets interesting. The United States recreational fishing industry generates approximately $50 billion in annual revenue. That's billion with a B, rods, reels, electronic fish finders, specialized lures, base boats, tackle subscriptions, fishing apparel, tournament entry fees. The entire economic model depends on one premise. Catching a fish is complicated and requires expensive equipment. Now hold that thought and look at a piece of legislation called the Dingell-Johnson Act of 1950. Also known as the Federal Aid in Sport Fish Restoration Act. Here's what it does. It imposes an excise tax on fishing equipment, rods, reels, tackle, and related gear. The tax revenue is then distributed to state wildlife agencies to fund fisheries management and conservation. Read that again carefully. And state wildlife agencies, the same agencies that write fishing regulations, are funded by taxes on fishing equipment. The more equipment anglers buy, the more funding those agencies receive. The more funding they receive, the larger their budgets and staffs grow. Now ask yourself a question. If you run an agency funded by taxes on fishing rods and reels, do you have a financial incentive to promote a fishing method that uses $1 in generic materials and bypasses every taxable product in your funding stream? The answer is obvious, and the regulatory timeline confirms it. As recreational fishing grew into a commercial industry through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, state-by-state regulations on trot lines tightened steadily. Some states imposed hook limits, others required constant attendance, which eliminates the entire advantage of passive fishing. Others banned trot lines outright under broad prohibitions on unattended fishing devices. The cultural language shifted too. Trotlining was reframed. What had been subsistence fishing for centuries became unsporting. What had been a standard household skill became a threat to conservation. The technique didn't change. The economics around it did. Now, let me be clear about something. Conservation concerns are not fabricated. Overharvesting in heavily pressured waters is a real problem. Trot lines in a small, overfished pond can do genuine damage. That's a legitimate issue. But there's a difference between targeted regulation addressing specific conservation risks and the near total suppression of a technique across an entire country. When you follow the money, from the $50 billion industry through the Dingell-Johnson excise tax to the state agencies writing the rules, the pattern exceeds what conservation alone would justify. Now, here's where we put the industry's $500 solution next to the $1 solution and let you see the difference for yourself. One rod and reel, one hook, one line in the water. And you have to stand there. You have to feel the bite, set the hook, fight the fish, land it, rebait, cast again. You're fishing with one hook that only works while you're personally attending it. Now picture a trot line, 25 hooks, stretched across a river channel, baited and set, fishing all night, fishing while you sleep, fishing while you do something else entirely. 25 hooks versus one. 24-hour operation versus your personal attendance. The efficiency multiplier ranges from 5 to 15 times greater yield depending on conditions, water, species, and bait selection. The math isn't complicated, it's multiplication. And here's the part nobody in the industry wants you to think about. You cannot build a $50 billion industry around a dollar's worth of line and hooks. Paracord is a commodity. Twine is a commodity. Circle hooks are a commodity. No brand can patent them. No company can create a proprietary version. No subscription model can be built around materials you buy once at a hardware store for pocket change. The knowledge isn't classified. It isn't hidden in some restricted archive. It's simply no longer taught, no longer practiced, and in most places, no longer legal. That's not conspiracy. That's engineered irrelevance, and it's the most effective kind of suppression there is. The kind where the thing just quietly disappears. If you're still watching, you're the kind of person who wants to know how to actually do this, not just hear about it. If knowing how to feed your family for $1 matters to you, subscribe. Every video on this channel gives you a skill, not just information. That's the difference, and it's why we're here. Before we get to the step-by-step, let's talk about what can go wrong. Because I'm not going to pretend this is magic. Trot lines are indiscriminate. You will catch things you didn't intend to catch. Turtles. Non-target fish species. Occasionally debris that looks and feels like a catch until you pull it up. That's reality. You will lose gear, current shifts, floating debris. Boat traffic cutting your line. It happens. Budget for replacement materials. Spoilage is a real risk. In warm weather, fish left on a trot line too long will spoil. In summer heat, checking intervals need to be shorter. You cannot set and forget for 2 days in July. The fish won't be edible when you get back. Theft happens. Unattended lines in accessible waters attract people who'd rather take your catch than set their own line. It's not common, but it's not rare either. You need water, a suitable river, creek, or lake. If you live in a desert with no water access, this technique doesn't apply to your situation. And the big one, legal risk. Under current regulations in many states, running a trot line can result in fines, gear confiscation, and loss of fishing privileges. Know your state's laws before you set a single hook. I'm serious about that. Every one of these limitations is manageable, and every one of them is preferable to not eating. Now, here's how you build one. Materials, 50 to 100 feet of main line. Paracord or heavy nylon twine works. You want something that won't snap under the weight of multiple fish pulling in different directions. Avoid monofilament for the main line. It stretches too much and degrades in sunlight. Dropper lines. Cut 12 to 18-inch sections of lighter cordage or monofilament. These hang down from the main line and hold your hooks. You need one dropper for every 3 to 5 feet of main line. on a 50-foot line with 4-foot spacing that gives you roughly 12 hook positions. Hooks, circle hooks. Size 2/0 to 6/0 depending on your target species. On 2/0 for smaller catfish and panfish, 6/0 for large flatheads and blue catfish. Circle hooks are critical. They're what makes the self-setting mechanism work. You need 2 anchor points, trees, root systems, or stakes on opposite banks, or 1 bank anchor and 1 heavy weight dropped in the channel. A knife, bait, and something to carry your catch. Step 1. Select your location. River bends, where current pushes bait and fish into a concentrated area. Creek mouths, where tributaries dump food into a larger body. Submerged structure, fallen trees, rock piles, undercut banks, channel edges where deep water meets shallow flats. Fish travel these edges. Put your line across them. Step 2. Prepare your main line. Tie a strong loop at each end for anchoring, starting 3 feet from one end. Tie a dropper loop or attach a dropper line every 3 to 5 feet along the main line. Step 3. Attach hooks to each dropper using a clinch knot or snell knot. The snell is stronger and keeps the hook oriented correctly. Either works. The hook should hang freely and rotate without tangling adjacent droppers. Step 4. Anchor one end to a fixed bank point. A tree trunk is ideal. Wrap and tie securely. Then stretch the line across the water to your opposite anchor. Pull it taut enough that the main line doesn't sag into a pile on the bottom, but not so tight that fish can't pull the droppers down. Step 5. Set your depth. For bottom-feeding catfish, you want hooks within 6 to 12 inches of the bottom. Adjust dropper length or main line height accordingly. For suspended species, keep hooks at mid-depth. Our target species determines depth. Learn what feeds where. Step 6. Bait every hook. Cut bait, chunks of shad, bluegill, or other oily fish is the standard for catfish. Live bait like worms, minnows, or crawfish works well. In a survival scenario, improvise. Insects, dough made from flour and water, cloth soaked in animal fat or blood. Fish are opportunistic. They'll investigate anything with scent. Step 7. Check your line every 12 to 24 hours. In warm weather, check every 8 to 12 hours to prevent spoilage. Approach quietly. Work from one end to the other. Remove fish. Rebait empty hooks. Replace any hooks that are damaged or missing. Step 8. Process your catch immediately. Gut and clean every fish as soon as it comes off the line. In a grid down scenario without refrigeration, preserve by smoking over low heat for 6 to 8 hours, salting heavily and air drying, or burying in cool earth for short-term storage. Protein that spoils is wasted effort. Process fast. Total cost for a complete trotline setup. Roughly $1 to $3 in materials if you're buying new. Less if you're scavenging cordage and making hooks from wire or bone, which is exactly what your ancestors did. You now know how to build something that took your great-grandparents a lifetime of living on a river to learn. And here's what matters. The real story isn't that trot lines catch more fish. That's simple mechanics. 25 hooks catch more than one. That's not insight, that's arithmetic. The real story is this: a technique costing $1, validated across centuries of continuous use. Still taught in military survival programs today, has been regulated nearly out of existence, while the industry it threatens generates $50 billion annually selling you the slow, expensive alternative. A $50 billion industry exists because they convinced you that catching a fish requires $500 in equipment. Your great-grandparents did it for $1 and caught 15 times more. You now have the knowledge, practice where it's legal, know your state's laws, and understand that in a scenario where the grocery store shelves are empty, the regulations become irrelevant, but the skill never does. The most dangerous gap in any survival plan is not a missing piece of gear, it's a missing piece of knowledge, and you just filled one. Check the vault link in the description for the full library. Next week, we cover a water purification method with the same story: ancient, proven, suppressed, and nearly free. You won't want to miss it.